You know, it's really hard to play Zeri as a support, and I'm not necessarily talking about in the game itself, but in the freaking lobby. If you hover it, people will ban it, and if you end up picking it, they will end up dodging a lot, and I mean a lot. And lastly, there have been a ton of people trying to play Zeri in every role imaginable, so it's hard for you to get it. But let's say for some godforsaken reason, you were actually interested in playing Zeri as a support and wanted to know how strong the living battery was at the role, then sit back and relax as I took it upon myself to answer that very question in this video.
This won't be perfect, but life never is.
When it comes to invading, there are a couple of things I need to talk about Zeri's kit. For one, you are forced to start Q, so you won't even have your W to slow anyone, but you can use your Q to check all of the bushes that your team is going to run through, and you can deal a lot of damage with this ability and press the attack, which can end up leading to you getting a random triple kill in the early game, which is pretty handy dandy if you're going to try and play Zeri as a support. But for Zeri's ability to invade, I will give her a flat C-. She offers nothing outside of a way to check bushes and some damage, but the damage is decent enough that she isn't completely worthless. I like to judge the overall laning phase based on 3 categories: poking, peeling, and all-inning. For poking, Zeri isn't bad at all in the support role. You start off with your Q ability, and you can pepper the enemy support from a very far away distance, proccing your press the attack and not allowing them to be able to respond back, and you can even auto them when they are in a bush without any vision with the way her Q works, which is hilarious. The other ability that you can use to poke is Zeri's W, which is a lot like Jinx's W, as it slows enemies hit by a lot, but has the added benefit that when used through a wall, it extends the range and can hit multiple targets, and in the bot lane, there are a ton of opportunities to utilize this advantage. When you play Zeri support, there are also 2 different build paths, one being AP and the other being AD. If you choose to go AP Zeri, then you can poke really well by just running up to enemies when the little orange bar under your character is full, which will proc your comet and slow the enemy, which should guarantee that they get hit by said comet. Your W also scales with AP and will also slow enemies so that they get hit by comet, and might even help you get some cheeky kills like I got on this Lux. For poking, I will give Zeri an A+ rating. You can do it fairly safely, and it does a decent amount of damage, but not the most, which is why I won't put it in S, but it is still noticeable enough where it almost fits in that tier. While poking is Zeri's strength in lane, peeling can be quite the struggle. When it comes to self-peel, you aren't all that bad. With a jump you can use to dodge abilities or get over walls, and an ulti that grants movement speed when you hit enemies with your Q. But in terms of peeling for others, you can auto-attack someone with your passive, which will slow them a bit, hit your W on someone to slow them a bit, or exhaust them to slow them a bit and reduce their damage. Now, if you follow this channel, you will know that I'm a big advocate of having hard CC for supports, and sadly that's Zeri's biggest downside as a support, and why she isn't great at peeling. Your best option commonly will be trying to turn the fight with your own damage before they can kill you and your ADC, but if you can't do that oftentimes, you will just have to painfully watch your ADC die, and for that reason I will give Zeri Support a C- for her ability to peel. When it comes to all innings, Zeri is surprisingly quite decent. If the opponents don't respect you in an all-out level 1 scrap, you will usually come out ahead because you have 2 ADCs versus 1 ADC and a champ with only 1 useful ability, so you should win and get first blood. Then, later on, if you've been able to poke the enemies down to about half health, you can look to make an aggressive play on the enemies like I did in this clip. I'm able to hit my W slow and dodge the Zyra route, which gives me the confidence to flash forward and exhaust, further slowing the enemy with an auto attack and getting both kills. A lot of the time, my allies and I would end up poking enemies so much that we would have the confidence to tower dive the opponents and finish them both off under there. For all ending, I will give Zeri a B-. While this may sound low, it is deservedly so, because it relies on you winning the poke battle in order to all-in them, and if you fail that step, you lack the hard CC to get on top of the opponents to secure a kill if they started off at full health, so I can't put her any higher, and that's why I think she is deserving of this rating in lane. Before we rate Zeri's overall ability in the early game, let's take a look at her matchups. Now Zeri is far from a traditional support, and one I highly recommend playing outside of ranked, but for fun within a normal draft game, she felt pretty nice to pilot. But that being said, most of her matchups are going to be tough, especially the ones with champions that just want to hard engage onto your ADC, and you can't really do much to stop them. These are the champions that, if you see them on the enemy team, buckle up, because if they don't suck, you are in for a hard time. Next up, we have some champions that are going to be hard lanes, but not completely doomed. These include supports with longer range than yourself, which of course includes Morgana, the League of Legends equivalent of Internet Explorer. Then there are some beefy supports that if they can ever close the gap without being poked down, it's gonna be a rough time. Then we have a bunch of squishy enchanters that will really hate dealing with your harass, and you might even have a chance of killing them in lane without them killing you back, so it is playable. Also, what I want to mention is the fact that with Zeri's passive, you actually steal a bit of the enemy's shields, and you gain movement speed when you have a shield, which means you are a natural counter to these champions, and it might help you win out on these trades even better. Then we have two champs that Zeri could do quite well into, at least in lane, which includes Zyra, as you can kill her plants and dodge her E, and Brand, who isn't super long range and you can dodge a lot of his abilities as well. Then the champion you can really clap is an enemy Zeri support player, because if someone is picking this champion, they're probably trolling and won't have all the glorious information you've gained from this video, so you'll be able to win. Finally, we have a bunch of champions in the who plays these guys even tier, because I'm still waiting to see them. In terms of ADCs you want to play with, I would recommend other pokey champions like Varus or Ezreal, which can help you get the enemies low so you can finish them off later, but if you end up having a really bad matchup, then I would recommend trying to roam a bit, so let's talk about that now. When it comes to roaming, Zeri is okay-ish. You can help set up plays from a screen away with your W ability through a wall, which is a nice asset to have. You can also hop over walls with your E to get towards an enemy and finish them off, which is great. And if you did well in lane and have a lead and the enemy Evelyn thinks they can duel you, then you might be able to give them a little bit of a surprise and be the assassin instead of the assassinated for once. But I can only give Zeri about a B rating for roaming because, once again, she has no hard CC, so we'll rely on her allies to set up the play, and if something goes wrong, she is so squishy that it's really easy for her to be the one who gets blown up instead, so this rating seems fair for her. When it comes to Zeri's overall ability to support in the early game, I will give her a B-. The simple fact is this. In the early game in lane, range is king, and that's why I don't think she is any lower for the early game. Now, you might be wanting to complain that this is too high for her, as you can't imagine you'll be winning many games with Zeri support, and I would 100% agree with you, because her late game as a support really struggles, so let's talk about that now.
I belong here. We all belong here.
In the late game, responsibilities of a support I like to rate include their ability to get picks and to teamfight. When it comes to getting picks, Zeri's strength lies in the fact that if you did well in lane, you will be able to dish out a lot of damage to kill people. However, as you can see from this clip where I had to flash exhaust the Varus to get on top of him, it could be a bit hard to force the pick to happen, and for that reason I will give Zeri a C- rating. She won't be able to 1v1 most people, but she is great at 2v1ing or 3v1ing people really quickly, as she will pump out damage. Now, let's talk about one of the main elements of League of Legends, which is team fighting around objectives, where supports are usually responsible for engaging and or peeling, but I'll also start considering their ability to dish out damage in these fights. Zeri has almost no engage whatsoever. The only thing you could kind of consider engage is your W slow from across a wall, and therefore I will give her a quick and easy D- rating for this category. When it comes to peeling in a team fight, Zeri isn't much better because again it's just her W slow that does anything for her allies. But one of the advantages of playing Zeri is the taunt that gets placed on enemy players so that they really want to kill you. And your kit has some dashes and built-in movement speed which will help you survive in some cases, which isn't bad. However, you normally want to be peeling for your team as a support rather than being the one who needs peel, so I'll give her a D- rating in this category. Finally, let's talk about the damage she can dish out in a teamfight, which really isn't bad in the support role. If the rest of your team can distract the enemy, then you can either pepper them with your Q like you are another ADC, or poke them with your W and autos and burst enemies down with your ultimate if you went AP. For dealing damage, I'll give Zeri an A-. It's all dependent on her having items and not dying immediately, which are two conditions that this champion will struggle with when playing her as a support. Before we look at Zeri's overall ability to support, let's talk about the runes and items I like to run. For runes, there are two options based on what playstyle you would like to run. For AD Zeri support, I would take Press the Attack as you can proc it fairly easily and will boost your ADC's damage. For the rest of the tree, I like Triumph, Legend, Alacrity, and Cut Down, as most people will have more HP than you, and for the secondary tree, I'm a sucker for Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic to help you sustain in lane. Then, for AP Zeri, I like to take Comet, as you can proc it easily with your auto and W, Mana Flow Band for mana sustain, Transcendence for cooldown, and Scorch for a little more poke. Then for the secondary tree, I still like Biscuit Delivery, but this time I like Perfect Timing as it allows you to outplay people and can build into Zhonya's if you want to. When it comes to items, I haven't fully explored all of her options, and I didn't want to subject my teammates to too many Zeri support games, so I'll tell you what I found out and what I think might work. The very first build I tried was Lethality with Eclipse, because my thinking was each time you gained the shield from the item, you would gain movement speed from your passive, and while this did seem to work, it kind of felt trash overall, so I wouldn't recommend it. In the game where I got a triple kill level 1, I just went for the standard Triforce build, which, while very, very expensive, did mean I did a ton of damage throughout the game, and it was rather fun, but highly doubtful to be replicated. Now if you're truly curious on trying out Zeri as a support, I would end up recommend playing her AP, which means starting off with a Spell Thief's Edge and going for probably cooldown boots later on. Then, for your Mythic, Imperial Mandate is actually an interesting item to go, as it procs on both your passive and your W, so you can get a lot of value from this item's passive, and it's rather cheap. Another thing you can try is to play like a really bad Artillery Mage and go Crown of the Shattered Queen if you yourself are not up against a lot of poke, as will help you survive a lot of burst. You could even try and get away with something really cheeky and weird like Everfrost to pull off some Everfrost dash root play that would be cool, but weird. And screw it, you could also try out Liandry's Anguish and maybe Luden's Tempest if you truly wanted. At the end of the day, with off-meta picks that aren't great, it's hard to say what you should go for, so feel free to experiment. For the rest of your build, you can go items like Zhonya's to survive burst, maybe a Lichbane if you're really ahead. It sounds not that bad because you can proc it with your Q, and maybe also go for something like a Morello if the enemy team has a lot of healing. Again, it's hard to say what items are best for Zeri support, and that's because it's hard to justify any reason to play her outside of wanting to let your creative juices flow, which is one of my favorite parts of this game, especially when I'm able to win by doing that. But when it comes to Zeri's ability to support overall, I will give her a D+ rating. Is it playable? Yes, very much so, as the early game is a lot better than I expected, but would I recommend it if you really want to win? No, absolutely not. But if you are in love with this champion and want to try out something new, I would 100% say give her a shot in the support role. That's the only role I've played her in, and I enjoyed her quite a lot actually, so you probably will too. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and leave it a like, that would be amazing. And if you want to subscribe, that would truly make my day. Thank you once again for watching, and I want to wish you good luck if you try out Zeri support for yourself. You will probably need it.